Hello, Gordon College. I was really blessed this morning that 2 out of the 3 worship songs were from Australia. What up, Australia? All 3? What? Hark the Herald Angels Sing was not written by an Australian. Connor, I don't know what you're talking about. All right. I swore I wouldn't sing, but it was irresistible. Hillsong is irresistible. So, the message that I'm going to bring you today is from a passage in Mark chapter, my page changed. Mark chapter 4, verses 35 to 41. You can turn there if you want, but I'm not actually going to read the whole passage because I want to tell it to you. Instead, I'll just read one verse and then we'll begin. It's this one, verse 38. Mark chapter 4, verse 38. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Did you know that people who are drowning in real life don't look like how they look like on TV? We think they look like this, with their arms waving, splashing, and yelling. But in reality, a drowning person is very quiet. That's what makes drowning so scary. They can just slip under without anybody noticing. So can we take this morning here in chapel as a holy moment for noticing? As I stand up here and looking at you and you are sitting there looking at me, let me see you. Are you drowning this morning? Do you feel like you are drowning this morning? Now, I know this time of semester can get really hard. The essays can pile up, exams can pile up, reading can pile up. Do you feel like you are drowning under schoolwork this morning? Are you drowning? I know it, I've been there. Some of you maybe aren't even students here, but you work here. This time of semester is hard for you too, right? Are you drowning under work this morning? Are you drowning? Some of you came back just this weekend from Thanksgiving with your family. How was that? Was it good? For some of you, it might have been very hard. Do you come back here feeling like you are drowning under the weight of your family this morning? Maybe for some of you, it's not all the stuff out there that causes you to feel like you're drowning, it's the stuff in here. Do you feel like you are drowning this morning under your thoughts, under your feelings, under your depression, under your anxiety? Just like we were seeing. Are you drowning this morning? Do you feel like you are drowning? The story from Jesus that I'm going to tell you this morning is a story about a bunch of guys drowning. Well, almost drowning. But to tell it right, I want to tell it from the beginning. The scene opens with Jesus standing on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. He's got the water behind him, the crowd covering the dunes in front of him, and in that annoying way that happens when you're at the beach, even though he's wearing shoes, he can still feel the wet sand beneath his toes. There was excitement over hearing and seeing Jesus that day, so much so that the people were pressing forward and Jesus was having to back into the water, the ocean starting to hit the back of his cloak, making it all soggy and heavy and wet. So Matthew has this brilliant idea. Let's get Jesus up onto this boat we have, like a little stage. So Jesus climbs up there, but he doesn't stand up there like a politician in a podium or like me, like a lady in her pulpit. Instead, he sits down, and the rest of the people sit down too, just like you are, and they listen to Jesus' stories all day. Listen until the sun goes down. And then Jesus says to his disciples, "How about me and you guys just get out of here? and go across to the other side of the lake. Have you guys ever been at a party where a best friend has said, let's get out of here. Let's go and hang out, just me and you together. It feels great, right, when that happens? That must have been how the disciples felt that day. Let's get out of here and go over to the other side of the lake. But it's dark out on the water, unusually dark. There is no moon. Andrew is at the front of the boat, holding this big steering oar, trying to steer the boat properly, but finding it difficult to not go in a wrong direction. He turns back and looks at Peter, his fellow fisherman. They both have the same worried look on their faces. They've been out here before. They know the way the Sea of Galilee can be, how it's surrounded by huge mountains, how winds can whip up over them and stir up big storms on the lake. They are worried that something is about to go down, and they are right. The wind starts whipping up, starts slapping their faces, starts tugging at the sail. It rises to gale force. It's pulling at their clothes. It's the kind of wind that we know when we drive on 128. Are you guys allowed to drive on 128? Yeah. That was the first thing I heard when I came to Massachusetts. A professor at Gordon said, some students' parents aren't allowed to drive on the parents banned them from driving on 128. I don't know why. So anyway, it's the kind of wind that causes your car to shake on 128. You know that wind, right? The wind that strips the leaves from the trees. The wind that causes us to get those emergency text alerts. All of the disciples are getting their emergency text alerts. And they see then the first of what they really don't want to see. It's a huge 6-foot-tall wave right there beside their boat. They are drowning. The way that a storm whips up in our lives, it's whipping up right now on that sea. Hold on, men, cries Peter. Steady your feet. The next wave is closer and crash, it goes into the hole. Then there is another one, crash, and the boat begins to sink. Everyone is searching for something to hold on to. Thomas, who is usually very brave, he starts crying like a baby. Matthew, who has never learned how to swim, what tax collector needs to know how to swim? He is going white as a ghost. They are drowning, they are drowning, they are drowning. Now, is everyone still on board? Cries John above the wind. He takes a roll call. Peter, yes, Peter is here. Andrew is here. James is here. Philip, Bartholomew, John, here. Thaddeus is here. Simon is here. Other James is here. You got to feel for other James, right? 12 disciples, and 2 of them have the same name. What are the chances? Judas is here. Jesus? Have we lost Jesus? But then comes a voice from the back of the boat, from the stern. Hi, John. It's other James, because why not? John, Jesus is here, but he's asleep. And as the boat is rocking and tipping on top of the water, and the mast is creaking and straining and threatening to break, the disciples are like, I'm sorry, what? Jesus is asleep in this? Do any of you have a friend who can sleep through anything? Woo! My best friend from college, her name is Karen. She's going to watch this. She can sleep through anything. Most expensive ticket to the theater I have ever bought, $120 for a back row seat. She fell asleep 5 lines into the first act, slept through the intermission, woke up as we were giving a standing ovation at the end. She has fallen asleep at dinner parties, at the movies. She fell asleep while she was giving birth. A human being is coming out of her She is like, you know what? My favorite story of Karen falling asleep through anything, she fell asleep in a Good Friday service once, slumped forward in the pew in such a way that she blocked an entire section of the church's access to the communion table. They had to go over her sleeping body to carry the bread and the wine back to their seat. Do you have a friend like that? A friend that can literally sleep through anything. Do you ever feel like God can sleep through anything? Do you ever feel like Jesus can sleep through anything? Like there is a storm whipping up right now in your school, in your work, in your life, in your family, in your friendships, in your home, and God is asleep on the job? Do you ever feel like Jesus can sleep through anything? I have felt like that. And I am not the only one. There are old songs from the Old Testament that express this very feeling. There's this one, Psalm 44, that goes, "Awake, Lord. Why do you sleep? Rouse yourself. Do not reject us forever. Why do you hide your face and forget our misery and oppression? Rise up and help us." Or there's this one from Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? Do you ever feel like this? Like God, like Jesus is asleep on the job? If you have been in that place, felt that feeling, prayed those prayers, then you know what it was that caused the disciples to look down to the end of the boat where Jesus is snoring, sleeping on a pillow, and cry out to him and say, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Of course he cares if they drown. Of course he cares if they drown. Of course he cares if they drown. Why would he else would he even be on this earth? Of course he cares if they drown. Why else did he call them to be his lousy disciples? Of course he cares if they drown, but they are never going to hear these words over the sound of the howling wind and the creaking wood and the sinking boat and the darkness and the water splashing in their eyes. And so Jesus, shook up by the sensation of how wrong the disciples are getting it, his eyes open, his head pops up from the pillow, his feet plant themselves on this tipping and sinking boat, and he turned to the wind and the waves in the way that sometimes I do to my kids when I can't hear myself think, and he says, "Wind, be quiet, waves, be still." The Bible says that the wind ran out of breath. And the waves were as still as glass, just like that. And the disciples are spooked. I mean, wouldn't you be too? I get kind of spooked when I see someone who can do the Rubik's Cube. Can you imagine seeing someone who can end a storm with a word? So it's understandable they are scared, but they're so scared, those disciples, they miss the point. Of course Jesus cares if they drown. He just knew they wouldn't. Jesus says to them, "Why are you so scared? Do you have such little faith?" Or to put it in our language, why are you guys freaking out? Don't you trust me yet? You see, Jesus wasn't sleeping on the boat because he wasn't worried about them. He was asleep on the boat because he wasn't worried about the storm. Jesus knew that God would carry them to the other side of the lake. That is a planned out, done deal. Nothing is going to get in the way of that. And Jesus knew he had ultimate power over the storm. Nothing could overpower him. So as long as the disciples were in the boat with Jesus, they were okay. If they are in the boat with him, they will not drown. Same is true for all of you, you know. That if you are in the boat with Jesus, you will not drown. Now, I know these words can sound like a spiritual aspirin, like the kind of aspirin your grandmother sometimes gives you. You know, crusty, hairy, fished out from the bottom of her handbag. Here, take this. It will make everything better. If you are in the boat with Jesus, you will not drown. But this is no aspirin I am handing you. This is not from the bottom of my handbag. This is a lived out, embodied truth from the rock bottom pits of my life. I have been in that place where I have said, I am going to drown. I failed 3 years of college. I was in my pastor's office crying, saying, all my friends are graduating and I basically have to start all over again. But by the grace and power and design of God, I finished school. I did not drown. I have been confused about faith. I have had those crazy thoughts, but going back to the scriptures, going back to Jesus' life, I did not drown under my doubts. I did not drown. I have been sexually assaulted. You know what? It happens to a lot of us, women and men. I have wondered if I would ever feel at home in my body again. But listening to what God says about me, going to the places where he says I will find healing, I can tell you I am making my way across that lake. I have not drowned. I have been depressed. I have had dark thoughts bubble up like water around my neck. And some days are still very hard. But hitching my life to Jesus, I can tell you, I want to live. Hear my spirit calling out to yours. If you need these words of encouragement this morning, if you are in the boat with Jesus, you will not drown. So Gordon College, remain in the boat. Do not leave Jesus. Be determined that wherever he is, you will be there too. And recognize that he is with you where you are in your darkest moments of your life. And rest. I mean, you can really rest on this truth, right? Rest in the truth that if you are in the boat with Jesus, you will not drown. Rest in the way that Jesus rested that day. I mean, when he put his head down on that pillow, he was trying to show his disciples how to be in a storm. He is trying to show us how to be in a storm. What are you saying, Alison, that like after this sermon, I should literally go back to my dorm room and sleep? Yes. Yes, that is exactly what I am saying. Go take a nap today and rest. Put your head down on the shoulder of a friend at Chester's this afternoon and rest. Tonight, put your head on your pillow and rest. Let's take a deep breath right now. And rest. You can rest on the truth that if you are in the boat with Jesus, you will not drown in the storm. And if you still don't believe me, if you don't believe me from this story and you don't believe me from my life, then think about the lived experience of Jesus. Jesus was betrayed, abandoned, whipped, beaten, and impaled on a cross. And as he hung there, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Can't you see that I am drowning?" And he cast his life into the boat of the Father God. And he laid his head down, this time not on a pillow, but on a dirty stone. 3 days later, they opened up that tomb. Death ran out of breath. And Jesus walked away from that storm alive. You are dismissed.